The Vanguard moved silently through the dark expanse of space, the soft hum of its engines the only sound breaking the vast silence. Captain Alera Marik stood at the center of the bridge, her arms crossed, her brow furrowed in contemplation. They had been summoned by the Alliance Council for a mission that weighed heavily on her mind, a diplomatic intervention between two warring species, the Raith and the Vexari. The message had been brief and to the point. The Raith and the Vexari, two advanced but bitterly opposed civilizations, were on the brink of war over a resource-rich planet in a contested sector. The Vanguard had been chosen to mediate peace talks and prevent what could escalate into a galaxy-wide conflict. But as Marik stared out at the distant stars, she knew the task ahead was anything but straightforward. "Captain," Lenka called from her station, her voice cutting through the quiet tension on the bridge, "we're approaching the Raith-Vexari border." "Bring us out of warp," Marik ordered, her eyes still on the view screen. "Let's take a look at the situation." The stars on the view screen slowed, resolving into their familiar pinpricks of light as the Vanguard dropped out of warp. Ahead, the contested planet came into view, a lush green world shrouded in a veil of mist, its surface marked by wide oceans and jagged mountain ranges. But despite its beauty, the planet was the focal point of a war that had been brewing for generations. "The planet is rich in rare minerals and energy sources," Orlis noted from her science station, studying the data on her console. "It's no wonder both species want control of it. Whoever holds this world gains a significant advantage over the other." "That's what makes this such a powder keg," Marik replied, her tone grim. "Neither side can afford to let the other gain control, but neither can afford the cost of a full-scale war. We need to find a way to mediate before this turns into an all-out conflict." "The Raith and the Vexari have been at each other's throats for centuries," Voss said, standing beside Marik. "They've never found common ground, and from what I've read, they're not exactly fond of outsiders interfering in their disputes." "That's why we need to tread carefully," Marik said. "We're not here to take sides. We're here to prevent a war." "Captain," Lenka interrupted, her voice tense, "we're picking up ships, multiple vessels from both the Raith and Vexari fleets. They're positioned in orbit around the planet." Marik's eyes narrowed as the tactical display appeared on the view screen. The Raith and Vexari fleets were in a tense standoff, their ships arranged in defensive formations on opposite sides of the planet. One wrong move, and the situation could escalate into a firefight that would engulf the entire sector. "We're walking into a standoff," Voss muttered. "This could get ugly fast." Marik took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Hail both fleets. Let them know we've arrived to mediate the talks." Lenka tapped a few commands into her console, opening a channel to both sides. The view screen flickered, and two figures appeared, one Raith, the other Vexari. The Raith representative, a tall, imposing figure with dark, leathery skin and gleaming eyes, spoke first. "Captain Marik, I am Commander Trellon of the Raith fleet. We have been awaiting your arrival, though I warn you, our patience with the Vexari grows thin." The Vexari representative, a lithe, insectoid figure with shimmering scales and glowing eyes, spoke next. "Captain Marik, I am Overseer Xylok of the Vexari Dominion. While we welcome your presence, we will not allow the Wraith to strong-arm us into a resolution that does not benefit our people." Marik raised a hand, her voice calm but firm. "I understand the tensions on both sides, but we are not here to favor one over the other. Our goal is to find a peaceful resolution that avoids the devastation of war. We request permission to open negotiations on neutral ground aboard the Vanguard." Commander Trellon's eyes narrowed. "The Wraith have no need for further talks. We are prepared to take what is ours. And the Vexari will not bow to Wraith aggression," Overseer Xylok added, her voice sharp. Marik could feel the tension in the air, the weight of centuries of conflict pressing down on the moment. She had seen this before, two species locked in a battle that neither truly wanted but both were willing to fight for. It was a familiar scenario, one that rarely ended well. "You both understand the consequences of war," Marik said, her tone measured. "Countless lives will be lost, and both of your civilizations will be weakened. There's a way forward that avoids that, one that protects your people and secures the resources you need without bloodshed. Let us mediate." There was a long, tense silence as both sides considered her words. Finally, Commander Trellon spoke. "Very well, Captain. We will attend your talks, but make no mistake, the Wraith will not be denied what is rightfully ours." "We will attend as well," Overseer Zylok said, her eyes narrowing. "But know this, any attempt to favor the Wraith will result in immediate hostilities." The transmission ended, and the view screen returned to the view of the planet below. Marik let out a slow breath, the weight of the situation settling over her. "That went about as well as could be expected," Voss said, his voice laced with irony. "They're both on edge, and we're the only thing standing between them and war," Marik said. "But they've agreed to talks. That's a start." Orlis glanced up from her console, her expression troubled. "Captain, I've been scanning the planet while we were speaking with the Raith and Vexari. There's something strange about it." Marik turned to her, curious. "Strange how?" "There's an energy signature deep beneath the planet's surface," Orlis said. "It's faint, but it's artificial. It doesn't match any known Raith or Vexari technology." Marik's eyes narrowed. "An ancient structure?" "It's possible," Orlis replied. "I'll need to run more scans to be sure, but it's definitely not natural. And if the Raith or Vexari know about it, it could complicate the negotiations." "Keep scanning," Marik ordered. "We need to know what we're dealing with before we bring it up with either side." As Orlis worked, Marik turned her attention back to the task at hand. They had secured a fragile agreement to mediate the talks, but the situation was far from stable. The Wraith and the Vexari had been locked in conflict for centuries, and trust was in short supply. One misstep could send them hurtling toward war. "Prepare to receive the Raith and Vexari delegations," Marik said, her voice steady but laced with tension. "This could be our only chance to prevent a full-scale conflict." Voss nodded. "Let's hope they're willing to listen." As the Vanguard prepared to host the negotiations, Marik couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something far more dangerous than a simple territorial dispute. The energy signature beneath the planet's surface was a mystery that could tip the scales in ways none of them could predict. And in the shadows of an impending war, mysteries like that had a way of making everything much more dangerous. Captain Marik paced in the briefing room, her eyes flickering to the large circular table at the center of the room. It was where the Raith and Vexari delegations would soon sit, a fragile piece hanging by a thread. The Vanguard had been prepared meticulously to host these high-stakes negotiations, but Marik couldn't shake the growing tension that gnawed at her gut. The door hissed open, and Commander Kalen Voss entered, his ever-calm demeanor hiding the weight of the situation. "They're both ready," Voss said, glancing toward the table. "Raith and Vexari delegations will be aboard within minutes." Marik nodded, but didn't stop pacing. "Good. We need to make sure these talks don't collapse before they even begin. The Raith have made it clear they think they have the upper hand, and the Vexari won't accept any deal that appears to favor them." Voss leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "And the energy signature beneath the planet." Marik stopped and sighed. "Still an unknown. Orlis is continuing her scans, but until we know what's down there, we can't afford to bring it up in the talks. If either side thinks we've uncovered something that could tip the balance, it'll complicate things even further." "They're already complicated," Voss muttered. "We're dealing with centuries of hatred between two of the most stubborn species in the galaxy. I'm surprised they even agreed to talk." "They don't want war," Marik said, shaking her head. "Not really, but they won't back down either, not unless we can offer them something that doesn't make them feel like they've lost." Easier said than done. Before Marik could respond, the door slid open again, and Orlis stepped inside, her face grim. "Captain, I've finished analyzing the energy readings from beneath the planet's surface," Orlis said. "There's definitely something down there, an ancient structure of some kind. It's emitting faint power signatures, but it's dormant. My best guess? An artificial intelligence, or perhaps a control system for something larger." Marik frowned. "And neither the Raith nor the Vexari seem to know about it?" "If they do, they're not letting on," Orlis replied. "But I doubt it. They've been fighting over this planet for decades, and no one has mentioned anything about an ancient structure." Voss straightened, his expression hardening. "If they find out, it could change everything. The Wraith might try to seize it for themselves, and the Vexari would likely retaliate. We could end up in the middle of a war with no way out. Marik's mind raced. The presence of an ancient, possibly sentient AI buried beneath the planet could change the entire dynamic of the negotiations. It could be a powerful bargaining chip, but it could also be a powder keg. We keep this to ourselves for now, Marik said firmly. We'll focus on the territorial dispute and try to get them to agree to a ceasefire. If we can prevent open conflict, we'll deal with the structure later. Orlis nodded, but the concern on her face didn't fade. Understood, Captain. But if that AI activates, we could be facing something none of us are prepared for. Marik didn't reply. She knew Orlis was right, but there were no easy answers. For now, all she could do was keep the peace and hope they had time to deal with whatever lay beneath the planet. The Wraith delegation was the first to arrive. Commander Trellon stepped into the briefing room, his tall, imposing figure casting long shadows against the polished walls. He was flanked by 2 Wraith guards, their dark armor gleaming under the dim lights. Trellon's sharp, angular features betrayed no emotion as he took his seat at the table, his eyes briefly meeting Marik's with cold intensity. Captain Marik, Trellon said, his voice low and measured. I trust you will conduct these negotiations with the impartiality you've promised. The Wraith have no intention of being cheated out of what is rightfully ours. Marik nodded, her face calm. The Vanguard, Ard and its crew have no stake in this conflict, Commander Trellon. We're here to mediate a peaceful resolution for both sides. That's all. We'll see, Trellon replied, his gaze sharp. Before Marik could respond, the door opened again, and Overseer Xylok of the Vexari entered, her tall, insectoid frame shimmering in the light. Unlike Trellon, Xylok's expression was animated, her compound eyes narrowing as she glanced around the room with a mixture of suspicion and disdain. Captain Marik, Xylok said, her voice a high-pitched, buzzing tone. I hope these talks are not an excuse to favor Wraith aggression. The Vexari Dominion will not stand for such treachery. I've assured Commander Trellon, and I'll assure you as well, Overseer Xylok, Marik said, her voice even. The Vanguard is neutral in this matter. We're here to facilitate a peaceful resolution, nothing more. Xylok took her seat, her posture rigid and defensive. Then let us hope these talks remain fair and balanced. The Vexari have no desire for war, but we will not be intimidated by Wraith arrogance. Trellon's eyes flashed with anger, but before he could respond, Marik raised a hand. We're not here to revisit old grievances. The goal is to find a solution that prevents further bloodshed. Both the Wraith and the Vexari have much to gain from peace and much to lose from war. A tense silence filled the room, the air thick with unspoken animosities that had simmered for centuries. Marik could feel the weight of the past pressing down on both sides, threatening to drag the negotiations into the abyss. But she had to keep them focused, had to keep them talking. Let's start with the planet itself, Marik said, taking control of the conversation. Both the Wraith and the Vexari have laid claim to it, but neither has established full control. What do each of you need from this planet, and how can we find a compromise that meets both of your needs? Trellon leaned forward, his eyes cold. The Wraith need the planet's mineral resources to secure our future. Our homeworld has been depleted by centuries of conflict. Without these resources, we will fall behind, leaving us vulnerable to outside threats. The Vexari require the planet's energy sources, Xylok countered. Our species thrives on the natural energy fields that run through the planet's core. Without it, our technology and culture will stagnate, and we will be left at the mercy of more powerful species. Marik nodded, absorbing the information. It seems both of you have legitimate needs, but taking the planet by force will only result in mutual destruction. Is there a way to share the planet's resources, ensuring that both of your species benefit? There is no compromise, Trellon growled. The Wraith will not share what is rightfully ours. And the Vexari will not live under Wraith domination, Xylok hissed. The tension in the room spiked, and Marik could feel the situation slipping out of control. But before she could steer the conversation back, Orlis's voice crackled through her communicator. Captain, we have a problem. Marik tapped her comm badge. What is it? I've just detected a massive energy spike beneath the planet's surface, Orlis said, her voice tense. The structure we've been scanning, It's coming online. Something is activating down there. Marik's heart sank. The ancient AI, or whatever it was no longer dormant, and if the Raith or Vexari found out, the fragile peace she was trying to maintain would shatter. She turned to Voss, who had overheard the transmission, and saw the same realization in his eyes. "We can't let them find out," Voss whispered. "Not yet." But it was already too late. Trellon's eyes narrowed, his gaze locking onto Marik. "What is it you're hiding, Captain?" Zylok, too, leaned forward, suspicion flaring in her eyes. "Yes, Captain. What is happening beneath the surface of that planet?" Marik's mind raced. The next few moments would determine whether these Alks ended in peace or war.